10 years ago, we hosted our inaugural, Day of Study in the Liberal Arts and Sciences as a forum for our community to come together and study with our talented teachers. We had been hosting an annual community Yom Yom for the Yamim Noraim, for the high holidays, for several years at that point, with our Judaic Studies faculty leading us in Torah study. And given the value that we place on Torah Umada, it seemed that this new day of study would be a wonderful complement to our Yemei Iyun, and it was. We're grateful that so many have joined us year after year for what has always been a very stimulating experience. As we'll see today, our faculty share fresh perspectives on traditional topics and introduce us to new philosophical concepts, challenge us to think both analytically and creatively, and in several sessions each year, including our keynote address this year, model for us how the content and methodologies of the liberal arts can enrich our appreciation of Torah and Jewish history. 2 years ago, we changed the name of this program to the Day of Big Ideas in order to really underscore that the content of the liberal arts and sciences teaches us to think big and to dream big and to apply what they have to offer toward enhancing our personal and religious understanding of the world. Before we begin our program by introducing our keynote speaker, I want to express hakarat hatov to several people whose participation and support has really been critical to the success of this day. First are our sponsors, the Brodsky family. For several years now, the Brodskys have sponsored this program in memory of Bernice and Bernard Kramer, Zichronam Livracha, grandparents of Molly Brodsky, of Mayanot's class of 2013. The Brodskys' commitment to both the liberal arts and to Mayanot, and to honoring their parents by sponsoring this day and honoring their parents' interests and commitments, are inspirational to the school and to me personally. And I'm deeply appreciative that they've continued to support and attend this program year after year. I'm grateful to Mrs. Rivka Kahan, our principal, who both crafts and embodies Mayanot's ideals of Torah in Derech Eretz, and who has supported this program from its inception. Mrs. Hannah Stiefel, our Director of Public Relations, has ensured that the word gets out and far about the Day of Big Ideas, along with all that is wonderful about our school. We could not run programs such as this without Mrs. Rachel Feldman, our Executive Director, who combines practical expertise with sensitivity to the concept and vision of everything that we strive for at Mayanot. Mrs. Pam Ennis, our Director of Development, has been ensuring for years that our Day of Big Ideas is supported financially and given the prominence that it deserves. Mr. Benny Reiner and Mrs. Michelle Rate-Major in our technology departments have ensured that everything runs smoothly on that end, including, I should point out, ensuring that we live stream this keynote speaker event, as well as video recording it, and that the individual sessions are going to be audio recorded so that if you go to one but are interested in another, they will be available. Mrs. Sarah Gruenspecht joined our front office recently and has been incredibly helpful in all areas, including ensuring that the logistics of this particular program are in place. We appreciate the ongoing support and attendance of our board members, including Mr. Daniel Altman, president of our board. And of course, a heartfelt hakarat hatov to our beloved faculty, those who attend and those who present, all of whom are deeply invested in both education and the people they educate with passion. Today in particular, we want to thank Rabbi Dr. Ari Berman. It is a great honor for us to host Dr. Berman, president of Yeshiva University, as our keynote speaker on this 10th anniversary of the Day of Big Ideas. Dr. Berman earned his BA from Yeshiva College, his MA in medieval Jewish philosophy from the Bernard Revel Graduate School of Jewish Studies, and Smicha from the Rabbi Isaac Elchanan Theological Seminary of YU. He was then a fellow in Ritz's post-ordination study program for future rabbinic leaders. In 2000, Dr. Berman became the rabbi of the Jewish Center in Manhattan, while also serving as an instructor of Talmud at Yeshiva College. 8 years later, he made Aliyah with his family. While living in Israel, Dr. Berman earned a PhD in Jewish thought at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, served as an instructor of Jewish thought at the Women's Seminary Midreshet Moriah, and was appointed head of Heichal Shlomo, Center of Jewish Heritage in Jerusalem, and served as a lecturer in rabbinic literature in the Jewish Studies Department of Herzog College, while also sitting on its Executive Leadership Council. Now in his second year as president of Yeshiva University, Dr. Berman is a spokesman for both the university and the Jewish community. He is married to Anita Berman, and they have 5 children, including the delightful Tamar, who has brought her wonderful spirit to my note from the moment she joined us last year. And now please join me in welcoming Dr. Berman as he delivers his keynote address, Who is My Brother? A Halachic Look at a Medieval Christian Dilemma. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Appel, for a wonderful introduction and for inviting me to speak this morning. It's always a pleasure to be in the presence of Mrs. Kahan, and it's wonderful to be here in Mayanot and in the Mayanot community. Mrs. Appel just mentioned my daughter. I have to say that we have a lot of hakarat hatov for the warmth and welcoming that Mayanot extended to Tamar, my Tamar. My Tamar is indeed incredibly precious and special, and it's beautiful for us to see her find the place in which she can grow. It is not easy to move from place to place. We've done it twice. It's not easy to make aliyah and to reestablish oneself in Israel, and it's not easy then to reestablish oneself in the United States afterwards. And the fact that Tamar has done so beautifully is a testament to the warmth of Mayanot and the way that you've extended yourselves to make sure that she finds a comfortable place that challenges her, that engages her intellectually, spiritually, emotionally. And we are enormously thankful. Thank you. A couple of weeks ago at Yeshiva University, I hosted a cohort of bishops from France with the Archbishop of Paris. This is a regular event at Yeshiva University. I think every other year we receive either emissaries from the Vatican, cardinals, bishops, and they come to Yeshiva University to learn from us what we are doing, how we transmit our Masorah. Yeshiva University is known as the premier Jewish institution in the world, and they come to understand, our methods and how we are successful in engaging the next generation. Now, I sat there in my conference room, surrounded by Rosh Yeshiva, bishops, Archbishop of France right next to me, and it was really interesting. So Archbishop of Paris, me, Rabbi Rosenzweig, right next to each other, a picture one doesn't always come up in one's mind. And it occurred to me that there are similar conversations that have happened in the past. I received my doctorate in medieval Jewish thought, and spent a lot of time in medieval France. Spent a lot of intellectual time in medieval France, a little bit of Germany, actually a little Egypt. I've had some travels. And what was amazing to me is that this conversation was so resonant because there were other times where the bishops and archbishops of France would meet with the rabbis of the community. But 800 years ago, the context of these conversations were fundamentally different. And the fundamental difference between the conversations and what is taking place today as reflected in such a meeting, I think represents the enormous opportunity for the Jewish community, the Jewish people today, and specifically our community. And to that, I will speak to this morning. Does everybody have source sheets? Do you have source sheets? No. Did they send that? My team, my Cracker Jack team, send that.
Who doesn't have it?
Oh, wait, check another one for
You know, can I have one of your copies then? See, my copy looks a little different than your copy.
Do you have more?
Okay, good. Okay, so they asked me to open the meeting, and I opened with a reminisce. Totally unplanned. I was just so surprised that we're sitting around with these bishops of France and the Archbishop of Paris, and it reminded me of a book. I said, you know, 800 years ago, there was a sefer written by one of the great rabbis of the day, Rabbi ben Shimon HaMeili. He's a predecessor of the Meiri, but Rabbi ben Shimon HaMeili, who wrote about conversations that he had with the Archbishop of Narbonne, the Archbishop in the south of France. And I referenced it when I spoke to him that morning, and I'll explain how I referenced it. But the conversations itself were very interesting. The relationship between the Archbishop of Narbonne and the Jewish community that's reflected in these conversations. One of the issues that came up was the issue of ribit, of interest. Now, the issue of interest was of great interest to the medieval Christian community, and then consequently the Jewish community, because in the medieval Christian community they outlawed interest. They outlawed interest. They thought it was morally wrong, and they based it on the pasuk in Tehillim. David HaMelech said, "Kaspo lo notan b'neshach, v'shochad al nakilo lekach." The blanket direction: don't take interest. And some early, the late antiquity in the church, they ruled that this was applies universally. It is prohibited to take interest. That's why Jews went into the field. You know, it was one of the few things that were left to them. The Christians weren't able to do it, so the Jews entered into the field. But every now and then, there was a Christian ruler who decided that it wasn't right. That it wasn't right that in his land they would have interest being taken when it was clearly prohibited, as in the pasuk in Psalms. So they would outlaw taking interest and take all the Jews' money and all the Jews' debts they would annul, meaning the debts to the Jews they would annul, and sometimes expel the Jews, and then they'd realize that actually they need people lending money, and that the economy needs lending money. Then they'd invite the Jews back, and then they'd come back, and then they'd do it again. It was like a very interesting cycle of life. Anyway, in this period, this specific time, it was in the beginning of the 13th century, and Louis IX, who was known as Saint Louis, and as we have a major city, and more importantly, I think, for this crowd, major baseball team, and others named after him. So he was a very pious king, and it bothered him. It bothered him that there would be interest-taking, usury, in his land when it was clearly prohibited. So he outlawed usury. He outlawed usury, and he annulled all the loans that were owed to the Jews. Now, in the south of France, there was a city of Narbonne. Narbonne wasn't in France's boundaries at that moment, and the King of France came to the Archbishop of Narbonne to encourage him to accept his decree and annul usury in his land and annul all the debts owed to the Jews. And what you have over here is a conversation between the Archbishop of Narbonne, who's trying to decide what to do, and the rabbi, the chief rabbi of the community. This is Rabbi Meir ben Shimon HaMeili. So look at, for example, in paragraph number 2. Now consider well, he said. Now keep in mind, let me just give a little more background for a second. In halakha, it is prohibited to charge ribit to who? To Jews. What does the pasuk say? L'nachri tashich, v'achicha lo tashich. You could charge ribit to a nachri. How do you translate nachri? Okay, it's a good question. What are the options of translating nachri? Idol worship, that's interesting. Who said idol worship? Okay, that's interesting. What?
A Gentile.
A Gentile. So a Gentile is different than an idol worshiper. A guy. What else could Nachri be?
Stranger.
A stranger. Okay, so keep all these things in your mind. So there's a contrast in the pasuk between Nachri and Achicha. Achicha is prohibited. Nachri, it's permitted, and some even say it's a mitzvah. Now, the Christians knew this. This is very important as background. Why the Christians knew halakha? Why did they know halakha? Why did they know halakha? At the beginning of the 13th century, the Christians knew the laws of the Talmud. Why did they know the laws of the Talmud? Converts. A lot of forced converts and conversions took place at the end of the 12th century. And by the beginning of the 13th century, the Talmud was well known. And all of a sudden, laws, rules, statements in the Talmud were called into question. And they would challenge, the Christians would challenge the Jews on the laws of the Talmud. And they would say, your Talmud is immoral. Because there are many laws that differentiate between Jews and non-Jews that are, in their minds, were questionable. This led, for example, to the Paris Disputation and led to the burning of the Talmud in 1241. And I had the in Paris. And I had the Archbishop of Paris right in my office. All right, less than 900 years, but they burned the whole Talmud. Right, and as I explained to Tamar, when you're burning the Talmud and it's kitvei yad, and you're gathering all the kitvei yad, you're losing a lot. You're losing a lot. There's no printing press. Okay, and it all came because of this. They knew the Talmudic dictums. The people in the disputations on the other side were converts. They knew the Talmud. So this Archbishop of the Rhone, he knows the Talmud, or he knows what he was told about the Talmud. And this is what he says. Now consider well. Second paragraph. Do you have a brother or sister among your co-religionists who can rescue you from the spoliation of the seneschal and his officers, who just this year sought to drive you from your spacious homes and to send you forth naked and unclothed into the cold? Indeed, he sought to hold your wealthy men in prison until they redeemed themselves of what they were thought to have safeguarded elsewhere, or until they circulated through the villages and towns at the doorsteps of Jews or of those who deemed foreigners any Christians. They released them, their funds illegally in fact, as concerns usury. Okay, so what happened? Apparently, before this conversation, some members of the local government attempted to take the Jews' money, take them captive, until they would get paid, annul their loans, and there was a whole effort in Arvon that would to steal everything from the Jews. And what happened when they did? Indeed, they, the Christians, were better than brothers, standing by you in your hour of trial. In fact, you know that as a result of my wise suggestion, taken by the councils of the town, they would not release your funds, and that they were prepared to go to the King of France himself to plead on your behalf. Who stood up for you? Who stood up for you in your moment of need? I did, he said. I, the Archbishop. I, my parish, Christians in our town, we stood up for you when everything was going to be taken from you. Are we not your brothers? We're not your brothers? You can charge us interest? You have any brothers who are more important to you? Tell me about them. Because I think I just saved your life. And you're telling me we're not brothers. You can charge me interest. Okay, this is a very uncomfortable moment here. Imagine what it's like being a Jew as a minority, vulnerable, no power, no rights. There are no rights. You're at the whim and mercy of the Archbishop and the government. And he's asking you, I've been thinking of you as a brother. I help you. You don't think of me as a brother? Now, the rabbi, it's a fascinating answer. Let's read the answer together. Clearly understands his position here. He says the following: indeed, your words are true. You have been a faithful father to us, and all the Gentiles have been like kinsmen and friends. But the reason for the permission to take interest from Christians is not quite as you've said. Know well that in all the Torah of Moses and the statements made directly by the divine, you will not find them forbidding the taking of interest except from the poor. Thus is written in the Periscope, Mishpatim, if you advance money to any poor man amongst my people, you should not act like a moneylender, you must not exact interest from him. And in the Periscope, Bahar, when your brother Israelite is reduced to poverty and cannot support himself in the community, you should not charge him interest on a loan, either by deducting it. Oh, that's why it's short. Okay, hold on. I missed a couple of, I will read it in my copy. Either by deducting it, you do have it? Okay. Oh, you have it? Oh, good. Yeah, exactly. An advance from the capital sum or by adding it on repayment. Thus, he did not forbid the taking of interest except from the poor. The basis for this is the concept of charitable behavior, just as he commanded to return the poor man's pledge at night. On the basis of the concept of charitable behavior, it is certainly not fitting to say that he must return a pledge to a wealthy man. Therefore, there is in the Torah no prohibition of usury from the wealthy at all. So what is his answer to the Archbishop? Say again?
They have money.
So there's no difference between Christians and Jews fundamentally. After all, we are brothers. This is a technicality. What's the technicality? Is that the halacha of ribbit, of interest, is only against the poor. You are wealthy, so we can take interest from you. But of course it would apply to you as it applies equally. Now, there's only one problem with this. What's the problem with this?
Not true.
It's not true. Except for the fact that it's not true, it is a brilliant answer. Okay, and here we get exposed to some of the polemical works and the questions that arise from these polemical works, which is how much of it is tshuvat haminim, which is a phrase that exists in this medieval era, which is the response to the minim. Who are the minim? They may not be Christians, actually. It could be apostates. I mean, it's the apostates that are the ones that have been raising these questions. It's the converts that have been raising these questions. They have to come up with answers. And they have to come up with answers very practically, or else they'd be dead. So this is a clever answer. I haven't found that it existed before, but maybe there is some strand in halakha somewhere. I haven't seen it. It is the pshat of the psukim. The pshat of the psukim all talk about poor people and helping them. It's very clever. But I haven't seen this in the Torah Shabbat Peh. But anyway, this is a good answer, to respond. But that's not the only question the Archbishop has. Because there are a whole slew of laws that differentiate between Jews and non-Jews. So, for example, issues of theft. It's famous machlokas, the Gemara and Baba Kama, when it's mutar to steal from a non-Jew. Possibly, then it's a sort, but there's an opinion. When it comes to lost objects, for sure. Lost objects, you have to return to your brother, to a Jew, not to a non-Jew. Take damages, as we'll see. There's a slew of laws that relate to Jews that don't relate to non-Jews. And the Archbishop is fully aware of the halacha. He's fully aware. Indeed, he asks, you must acknowledge that as you judge me, so may I judge you. Now behold, it is written in your Talmud that robbery of the Gentiles, theft from the Gentiles, and the Gentiles' funds are all permitted to you. Also Also concerning the return of lost goods, you say that such goods belong to you and need not be returned to their owner. Since this is your view of us, we may likewise judge you, failing to return your loans, and even that which Gentiles rob from you. Listen, if this is your law, I'll just do the same thing. Any non-Jew who steals from you, I won't tell to return it. You take a debt, I won't force them to return it. You don't force them to return it. I'll just do, you know what, I'll hold by Talmudic law. And we'll just reverse it. Right? They know the Talmud. So what I want to speak to you about this morning is how exactly the rabbis conceptualized these halachot, not just to defend themselves against the non-Jews. That's one thing, as I said, and there, even there might be an allowance for, bending one's level of complete accuracy in order for the greater good of saving their community and their lives. What I mean to ask is also how they defended the tradition to themselves. Of course, we think that the Torah is moral and good. We know that its wisdom is something to enhance our lives and, as I'll talk about at the end, and the world around us. Faced with these questions, which are new questions in one sense, they've always existed in the Talmud. You already have non-Jews who study, who ask questions about laws that seem like there are discrepancies between Jews and non-Jews. It's already found in Gemarot. Right? The idea of these questions of the discriminatory or potentially discriminatory laws has long been raised, externally for sure, but also internally. And how did the Rishonim, certainly those who lived at that time, in that period, how did they think about, conceptualize, and respond, again, not just outwardly, but inwardly, to understanding our tradition? And this is a huge discussion, which could take a semester's worth. But being that we have limited time, I'll focus primarily on the issue of ribit, on usury, and throw in a little bit of aveda, lost objects, and even maybe nezikin and damages. So let's look at the sources. If you look at ribit in source number 1. Or actually, let's just begin in source number 2. If you see from, this is the pasuk we quoted, L'nachri tashif la'achicha lo tashif. You see in the pasuk in Dvarim that there's a differentiation between nachri on the one hand and achicha on the other. And we raised before different possibilities. Achicha means brother. What does nachri mean? You said idol worshiper, Gentile, foreigner. Okay, keep that in mind, whatever nachri means. Look back at source number 1 now. Looking back at source number 1. Pasuk says in Vayikra, if your brother falls on hard times and his hand slips from amongst you, v'echzaktabo. What does v'echzaktabo mean? Should strengthen him. Ger v'toshav v'chai imach. What does that mean? What does that mean? Ger v'toshav v'chai imach. Ger, stranger. V'toshav, v'chai imach. So, okay, good. According to that reading, who are you supposed to strengthen whose hand slips? Everyone. Everyone, or... So, a ger and a toshav. And it looks like two separate people. There's a ger and a toshav.
Or are they the same?
How are they the same?
Because ger is like Abraham was a ger toshav, living amongst the people
So Avram used the phrase ger b'toshav anochi machem, that I am a ger b'toshav amongst you, and he's not referring to himself as two separate people, but there's an ambiguity what this phrase is. So is this phrase referring to, is it like one, it's a category of person who's somehow split, who's a ger and a toshav? Is it referring to two separate groups of people? There's a ger and there's a toshav? It's unclear. It sounds like you have to support this person. Is this person achicha? No, there's a nachri on the one hand, there's a chicha on the other. Now there's a ger toshav, which could be two other people, or maybe one person. And then the pasuk says, "Al tikach meito neshech b'tarbit." Don't take from him ribbit. Who are you not supposed to take ribbit from? So is it you're not supposed to take ribbit from the ger b'toshav? And ger b'toshav is somebody who's l'chora, is he Jewish or is he not Jewish? L'chora is not Jewish, whatever these words mean. And he is not a chicha, but you shouldn't take ribbit from. So nachri you're allowed to take ribbit from? You certainly. It might be even a mitzvah. Nachri tashich. Achicha, can you take ribbit from? Definitely not. Ger b'toshav, a little unclear. Actually, there are two opinions in the Tanaim. If you look in Masechtot, in the Mishnah, source number 4, the Mishnah says, I'm talking about ger toshav, and the Mishnah, by the way, and the Tanaim put it in one category. There's something called a ger toshav. Right? It's not ger v'toshav. There's something called a ger toshav. And they say, although that's not necessarily how they interpret each of the psukim, that's a whole other story. When it comes to non-Jews, you borrow from them, you charge them biribit, and also by ger toshav. The ger toshav has the same, when it comes to ribit, has the same status as a non-Jew, as any other non-Jew, charging biribit. However, Masechtot Tanot, when we talk about ger toshav, one of the halachot it says is lo mavanoto, lo lovim imenu biribit in source number 5. You cannot charge him ribit. And it's reflective of the ambiguity in the pasuk, because the pasuk is unclear. And the Gemara explains why it's asur based on the Mishnah, but it's unclear. So what we see over here is that in halacha, there are categories of people. There's something called achicha, your brother. There's something called ger v'toshav, and there's something called nachri. Right? You have different categories of people. Okay, look at Aveda, for example. The pasuk says by Aveda, "L'chein ta'aseh l'chol Aveda tachicha," that it's that if you find a lost object, you need to return it to all of the Avedat Achicha, all the lost objects of your brother. So the Midrash says, look at source number 7, L'chol Avedat Achicha lahotzi et ha-goy. You're only chayiv to return the objects of your brother, to exclude objects of the goy. There's a nice other term. Goy. Goy is a fascinating term. What does goy mean in the Torah? Nation. Does nation mean, is it anything discriminatory when it comes to nation? No, because Am Yisrael is called goy. Goy in the Torah just means nation. At some point, and there are interesting articles when this happened, at some point it switched, and goy became not Jew. When it happened, why it happened, what it means about their worldview, that it happened is fascinating. Fascinating. But goy became non-Jew. So here we have another term, which is goy, which is you don't have to return to the guy. Look at on Ezekiel, it says in Shor Shanagach and 8, V'chiyagof shor ish et shor re'ehu. Another phrase, re'ehu. when the shore of a man gores the shore of Re'ehu. So the Tanaim say, who is Re'ehu? Look at the next page. Re'ehu lahotzi et ha lahotzi shor shel nachri, shor shel kuti, shor shel ger toshav. So what does that mean? Ira?
We have another category here.
Of kuti. So lahotzi et when your animal damages somebody else's animal, you have to pay money. If it's Karen, you have to pay Chati Nezek for the first couple of times, so it becomes a Muad, then Nezek Shaim. But all of these halachot only apply to Shor Re'ehu. It's not Shor Re'ehu, but it's a Shor Shel Gai. Shor Shel Kuti. Who's the Kuti, Ira? Who's the Kuti?
They were
Samaritan.
converts, but not necessarily true converts.
You know, Ira and I have a long-standing tradition. Whenever he's in the room, I call on him. I was the rabbi of the Jewish Center. We used to I had shiurim, public lectures. There's 500 people in the room. And then I'd be in the middle of the lecture. I'd say, Ira? Poor guy, his whole life. Okay, so this is nothing, I'm saying. This is nothing. So lahotzi at the guy, there's a kuti, and then there's a ger toshav. And all these people, if it's their shore, you don't have to pay. Okay, so you have a lot of people, a lot of different kinds of people in halacha. And you see that they're differentiating discriminatory laws. Some laws only apply to achicha. Other laws apply also to ger toshav. There's some laws that also apply to guy. There's a range. There's a range. So going back to the issue that I framed in the beginning, how did the Rishonim deal with these issues? Specifically, the Rishonim who lived in the Christian lands. We'll focus on them for this matter. So if you look at source number 13, let's start with 14 actually. Start with the Ramban. The Ramban forwards a fascinating position. A fascinating position. Okay, the Ramban Moshe ben Nachman lived in Gerona in 1194 to 1270. Certainly knew about the Christian disputations, as he himself was a participant in one of them. Certainly knew what was going on at the time. Ubi'er bekan she ribit anachri mutar. So notice in Dvarim it says that ribit for nachri is permitted. V'lo izkir kain begezel b'gneva. Kamosha amru gezel goy asur. And it doesn't say that gezel or gneva is mutar, just the opposite. Gezel goy is asur. Aval haribit shhu na'aseh l'dat shneim u'birtzonam lo na'asar el mitzara achva v'achesed. Moshe tziva v'after recha k'mocha. U'k'mo shamar sham l'cha peni yadavar im amavavcha v'yayel. V'al kein amar l'mani v'racha sham l'kecha. Ki chesed v'rachamim yaseh amachav. V'sheyovenu b'lo ribit v'chshav lo l'tztaka. V'chein hashmitza chesed ba'achim. V'kach amar t'nachri tigosh. V'kav lo bracha. Ki hakotzuv lo yaskir bracha rak b'tztaka v'chasadim lo v'gezel v'gneva u'ba'ona. What is the Ramban saying over here? Why is ribit mutar to a nachri, but gneva and gezel is asur? Why?
Because they both agreed on it.
Because they both agreed on. Okay, so the Jew also could agree on. Why should it be asur for a Jew? Family discount. Okay, so it's very important. So the Ramban is forwarding a two-tiered system. The Ramban says there's something called mishpat and there's something called chesed. When it comes to the realm of mishpat, Jews have to act the same to all peoples. There's no difference. Zela, Geneva, it's wrong. And therefore, you cannot do it to anybody. But then there's a higher level called chesed. Chesed is not, it's not immoral to charge ribit. Two people agree, it's the way the economy works. There's nothing wrong with charging ribit. When your brother asks you, your sister asks you to lend you money, so chesed, berachamim, is you lend them money without charging ribit. It's a loss, because by lending them money, you're not using your own money. I mean, there's a loss here. But it's a higher level that you're obligated to do to your family, the family discount, because it's chesed, berachamim, as opposed to mishpat, which is grief for me. And that actually, it's interesting because the Ramban says this, you'll see their earlier sources, but that's what the rabbi says to the archbishop. You know, we'll get to that later, actually. Okay, now the Ramban was preceded in this comment by the Radak. Okay, David Kimchi from Provence, actually Narbonne, who in his commentary on Tehillim, writes the following: Kaspo lo natan b'neshech, v'David v'Yechezkel lo asru el masha asra Torah, v'Torah lo asra el Yisrael. Now this pasuk is very sensitive, because this is the basis, this is the reason why the Christians prohibited usury across the board. So the Radak on Tehillim, when he gets to this pasuk, knows exactly what this pasuk is being used for in other contexts. And he says, the pasuk does not intend to make across-the-board prohibition, because the Torah said it's only asur to Yisrael, but not to an achri. But it doesn't say the same thing when it comes to stealing and lost objects and or not. And he puts aveda in here, which is very important. When it comes to, we'll get back to aveda another time. When it comes to nachri, it's prohibited to injure him, to steal from him in any way. But okay, so far it's the same thing, right? You have a two-tiered system. Mishpat applies across the board. When it comes to Jews, there's a higher level of chesed and rachamim, or family. And then look at his twist. This is fascinating. Why do we deal that way with non-Jews, without the special chesed? Kibarov haim sonim Yisrael. Because most of them hate Jews. Aval bevadai. Im osa hagoy chesed v'tovim Yisrael. Chayav lasot Yisrael gam ken imo chesed alativ lo. But certainly, if the non-Jew treats us kindly, then we are obligated to react in kind and treat him kindly as well. V'chavti lecha b'zeh kidei shetimtza bo tshuva lenotzrim shomrim ki David lo hifrish ben Yisrael l'gai el kol ribit asur b'zeh lo yitechem bo. David wouldn't change the Torah. So he makes there's a twist. So there's a two-tiered system. There's mishpat and there's chesed. But it's not an across-the-board split. It depends. You have to evaluate the non-Jew. What do you evaluate the non-Jew based on? How he treats us. If he or she treats us with chesed, then we must respond in kind. If he or she will lend us money without ribit, then we should not lend money without ribit. And we must act in kind. It's actually similar to what the Archbishop was saying. Which is interesting. Yes?
In this week's Parsha, I was actually going to bring this up before we made this point. In this last week's Parsha, in one pasuk it says, for Moshe, calls Achicha twice. It says Achicha twice in the same pasuk. And I think it's the Ibn Ezra that says that one Achicha was talking about his Egyptian brothers, because he was brought up very nicely in this world. And one was to his Jewish brothers.
Yeah.
So that is what I was going to say. Doesn't depend. He saw him as achicha, both of them. So it doesn't depend how we see where we're living, how they treat us as
It could
achicha.
be.
Based on
I mean,
that
that, the story of Moshe, since I'm in my notes, I would say that the story of Moshe and his development as a character and how, how he saw himself and his personal identity and who was achicha in his life, in his younger years, in his older years, and was there an evolution in that process in any way, is something that should be further explored. But here we're talking not narrative, we're talking halakha. We're saying it's very halachic. There's a great nafkaminot. You know, what are you supposed to do? Now this line in the Radak, this twist, is taken much further and in a different way by the Meiri. And the Meiri famously, look at source, let's shorten this. Look at Aveda, source number 16. Okay, the Meiri is fascinating in these lines. His influences by this time actually are not just in the rabbinic era in Ashkenaz, but also certainly, in my opinion, include the study of the Rambam, which was always in Provence, a very strong person. We're not going to have time to do that now. But anyway, if you look at the Meiri in Aveda, we'll just read the English. It follows that it's even forbidden to steal from idol worshippers and those who are not restricted by the ways of religion to rope darchei hadatot. If a Jew was sold to one of them, he may not be extracted from his possession without payment for his redemption. You cannot steal from anyone, even idol worshippers. Similarly, it's prohibited to withhold payment for a debt owed to him for a loan. However, one is not obligated to seek out his lost object in order to return it to him. Furthermore, even one who found the lost object of his is not obligated to return it. For finding a lost object is a partial acquisition, and returning it is pious behavior derech hasidut. We are not compelled to act piously towards someone who has no religion. And so too in terms of his mistakes. If he made a mistake on his own, not as a result of our deception or effort, there is no need to return it. Nonetheless, if the non-Jew became aware of it, the Jew is obligated to return it. And similarly, even in the case of lost object, God forbid if there's an element of chil Hashem, then he must return it. But anyone who belongs to the nations restricted by ways of religion, and who serves God in any way, even if their belief is very different from ours, are not included in these rules, but are completely like Jews in such matters, including the obligation of returning lost items and the ban on taking advantage of their mistakes and all other things without any difference. In Hebrew, it's Ela Hareim Ki Yisrael Gamor L'Dvarim Elu. Okay, what is the Meiri saying? What is the Meiri saying? I already called an error. I can't do that. I think we're going to the well. Yeah.
That all the things you can't do to Jews and that you have to do for Jews, you have to do also for people like the Christians.
So he differentiates. So the Meiri, correct? The Meiri has a 3-tiered system, not a 2-tiered system. And it's much further, it's much more advanced than what the Radak says. The Meiri says, first of all, there's a layer that's just for the Jews. He doesn't say it here, but the Isur of Ribbit just applies to the Jews. Right? There are certainly halachot that only apply to your fellow Jews and your Jewish family. Ribbit is one of them. It's Asur, it's Mutar for non-Jews. In fact, he says it's even a tzad mitzvah for non-Jews. You're helping them to lend them with Ribbit. But it's that level, only Jews. Then there's a level on the bottom, which is for everyone. You can't steal mishpat. You can't steal, even if the guy's an idol worshiper, cannot steal. That's across the board. And then there's a middle level, as opposed to the Radak, whose middle level is, you see how they act towards you. How does the Meiri define the middle level? Say again?
Faith-based or religious.
A faith-based religion.
I think it's perception.
Well, hold on. It's a faith. If somebody has a faith, and I can tell you from other places in the Meiri, somebody believes in a God who rewards and punishes, and who has hashgacha in this world, that's his or her faith. That person is called Umot Hagdurot Bidatot, whose actions are governed by belief, by religion, by dictates. That person is called Yisrael for these halachot of returning a lost object. It says, for the halacha Avedas Achicha, that person's not a guy. Can you marry that person? No. Into marriage, he's still a guy. Can you charge that person ribbis? You can absolutely charge that person ribbis. But can you keep his lost objects? No, you have to return it. For all of these areas, he's like Yisrael. And the Meiri has a line all throughout his works about these kinds of people. And it's not talui in how they treat you. It's talui on the character of their personage. It is not the color of their skin, but the content of their character that determines their status. For these halachot, there's a middle ground. So the Meiri, the Ramban has a two-tiered system. The Radak gives I'd call it, it's 3, but it's like 2.5. The Meiri clearly lays out a 3-tiered system of people. And what's even more extreme is what happened in the 15th century with Albo, with Rabbi Yosef Albo and the Barbanel. And there, I'll just say it quickly, I think we're running out of time, is if you look what they do in source 23, everybody's agreed that Rebit is asur to a Jew, but not to a non-Jew. But Rabbi Yosef Albo says, "V'lo tatir haribit ela min nachri ovid avodah zarah." What does nachri mean? Only somebody's ovid avodah zarah. It's only mutar ribit for a guy ovid avodah zarah. Ka'amra l'nachri tashich. Avodah zarah she'einu rotzu l'kayim zayim mitzvah b'nei Noach ki ger toshav gufo mutar. K'vi haskamat kol hadatot v'afilu sofim matirim damo v'amru hargola mi she'en lodat. It's a line actually Meiri says also, I won't get into it now. According to the Rabbi Yosef Albo, it's asur, the only time it's mutar to charge ribit if the guy was ovid avodah zarah. He's an idol worship. And if you look at the Barbanel, he says, also raises the issue. He goes even further a little bit in his language. Look at the underlines in the last page. Va'omnam lezera edom lo yomar nachri ki hu nikra ach shenemar lo t'de'ev edomi ki achichu v'nachal lo tashich l'achicha. That's amazing. What does he say? There is a time, first of all, okay, it does say in the pasuk, when it says to Am Yisrael how they should treat Edom, it says Lo tita'ev Edomi ki achichahu. Who's Edomi? Who's Edom? Okay, Edom is Esau. Edom is a nation on the side of Israel that in Breshit we're told that Esau came. It was already there before, but Esau came and it grew and prospered. Edom is an ancient kingdom. And it says that, and there's special rules when it comes to the Bnei Lot and the Bnei Edom, because they are, in the Torah and Dvarim, they are Achicha. Now, in rabbinic literature, Edom became the signature, or the symbol, for Rome. And then it became the symbol for Christianity. Now, it's not that Esau's children were Christians, right? But it became the symbol for Christianity. And the Barbanel says, since Edom is called Achicha, So the Christians are achicha, and therefore in the pasuk lo tashich lachicha lo tashich, it's asur to charge ribbit to Christians. And this is a progression of ribbit. I have seen it one other place. And the other place, if you look back what the rabbi said to the archbishop, the rabbi said to the archbishop is that all those halachot are just for the 7 nations and for idol worshippers, and they're not for anybody else. So here, the Barbanel and Albo is saying the same thing about ribbit, which is a pretty strong extension. Now, to what extent, and one could argue this, by the way, totally would be fair, it's Tshuvat Haminim, and that's all these questions with these works. To what extent this is what they're saying is halachically true, to what extent is it a reply for the times? You know, I'll leave you to query that. I don't think that's true for the Miri, though. Others have argued that for the Miri. But that's in a pretty extreme extension, yeah.
Well, the Barbanel, wasn't he living in Spain at the time?
Yeah,
So
Portugal.
Right, Portugal, Spain, not really so infiltrated in the culture, the Christian culture, and so.
No, at that time it was totally Christian.
Was it?
Yeah, totally,
So
totally.
he was husking not just for the French Jews, but for the Christians, for the Spanish Jews.
No, it was definitely, his story and travels and through the expulsion, himself is an interesting person, and where he wrote everything that he wrote. But he certainly grew up and raised and reared in Christian-dominated territories. So here, what you have over here, I need to wrap up. What you have over here is a fascinating conversation about personal identity. How we view the world and how we view ourselves. What are the circles of identity that we are a part of? We are Jews as one circle. There's another circle, perhaps, of peoples of faith. Maybe it's not so much faith as much of people of character. Maybe there's another circle about character. Maybe there's a circle about how we act, of people, mutual actions towards each other. There's another circle about being fellow human beings. How you act to a human being, a fellow Tzelem Elokim. There are multiple, when it comes to personal identity, there are multiple circles. The world is not just split into black and white, us versus them. But there are different layers of personal identity that puts us in other kinds of circles. And again, I'm not speaking about narrative, I'm talking about halacha, lagamri. Now, in the United States, it's very easy for you to understand this. Okay, but I have taught both in the United States and I've taught in Israel. And I have to tell you, there's a fascinating split between the two. In the United States, let's say our general Jewish population wouldn't understand why there's any discriminatory laws between Jew and non-Jew. It would be like it's a Pella, and you need to figure out answers to, explain it. Okay? In Israel, they have no problem with that. Okay? They are the Pella that there are shitot that you treat non-Jews like you would Yisrael. Like this Miri blows their minds. Now, a lot of it has to do with culture. Right? I have a house in Teaneck and a house in Neve Daniel. It's a very different place. Okay, where you're surrounded. Tamar has grown up surrounded in this community in Teaneck and her Datilumi friends in Israel who are protesting any house or shell that's being taken down anywhere outside of the green line. In Israel, I've taught in Herzog, when I tell them these laws, they can't understand it. Because for them, a non-Jew is someone who's trying to kill them. They have no problem understanding why we differentiate between the two. I'm explaining it through their experience. It could be other reasons also. In terms of the Masorah, the difference between the Masorah of Rav Soloveitchik, for example, or Masorah of, I would say Rav Kook, but it's not just Rav Kook. It's a whole mystical movement that could differentiate between nature. Like we naturally assume that we're all the same people. Right? We all have the same hardware. What's different is the software. But there, in our parallel community, they question the hardware. Right? Does everybody have the same kind of neshama? Right? It's a whole other world, and it's fascinating teaching this topic, both here and there, to see the reactions. You know, what is natural and assumed, and what is challenging. And it's one of the examples where I think where we learn so much from each other in conversation and dialogue, and you know, that's very important to us, certainly in our future, to be a bridge to the Jews between Israel and Chutz La'aretz, people who speak the same values, Torah, texts, and ideas. We have a unique role to play. But I wanted to close on a different point. Somebody had a question? Yeah?
Yeah, you were quoting the Talmud, and they talk about you know, there are different categories of achicha and a toshav and a ger.
Yeah.
Does the Talmud ever change its perspective that the Jews in Europe were really the gerim?
Yeah.
So the Talmud was talking to Jews who were the majority, the ones in power, and now, you know, the rabbi in the Middle Ages is dealing with the situation where the Jews are the gerim and
yeah. Well, there's no
the
question the
settlers
rabbis were not talking in a time where they were in power. Certainly, the Amoraim were in Bavel, and it's in the Talmud Bavli, and even the Tanaim in Israel, certainly Amoraim in Israel, were all in the context where there was not a Jewish government. It was a Roman government. And they had to deal with the other kinds of influences and other kinds of questions, which is living in Israel surrounded by Roman Avodah Zarah all the time. Right? And that is a theme that runs throughout Masechet Avodah Zarah. And they had other kinds of challenges. And there, also, I mean, they deal with what's the status of an Oved Avodah Zarah at that time. How do you define Avodah Zarah? I mean, all these the questions that the Rishonim faced were different, but similar to those that were before them. And obviously, they were infused with the Masorah. I mean, the Ramban, Radak, Barbanel, Yosef Albo, Rameir ben Shimon Hami'ili. These are all tremendous Talmidei Chachamim, who their whole worldview was shaped by the Talmud, by the Halacha, by the Torah Shebachtav and the Torah Shebal Peh. And they found these shitot within that tradition. And they're emerging from that tradition. And of course that is the case. And and it's reflective in different things they say, but you know, there are different opinions in the Masorah about that. Let me just close then by going back to how I started, which is that in our modern times, the opportunities for us are enormous. And especially for this community that is so comfortable in all of these different circles. That we have opportunities today that never existed in Jewish history. Never existed in Jewish history. And certainly when it comes to a high school for women. opportunities for women today in all worlds. And we work on this deeply. And the Barron campus in Stern College in Cy Sims, not just, of course, in Torah and learning, that's Muvan Me'alav, but in tech, in business, in entrepreneurship, in science, and finance, all the areas where we have our women now are fully engaged and have great access to all spheres, right? And for both our men and our women. And the opportunity to be Makadesh Shem Shemayim Barabin, to go out into the world with your values. Right? I don't know if it's ever existed. I was just speaking to a common relative of Ellie and I. And he was telling me a story that when he was younger, now he's an older gentleman, when he was younger, he came out of law school, he was in a room, and there was a big client there. And he realized that he didn't bench yet. So he started benching under his breath, hoping that no one would see. And the client saw that he was benching and stopped him and said, "What are you doing?" And he was in the middle of benching, so he couldn't answer. So he continued benching. And then he finished. And he said, "No, nothing, nothing." And the client said, "You were benching, right?" Don't be embarrassed about it. Today's generation is not embarrassed about it. Our kids leave YU with their kippot on. Our kids leave our university, leave our community, fully engaged, full access in the world, with their kippot, with their values, proud of who they are. There is no need to apologize for benching. What happens is dafka the opposite. People respect it, and they're interested in it. And I can tell you that from across the board. We have people coming to Yeshiva University to learn from us on what we're doing on all spheres. Notre Dame came to YU. They sent some vice presidents because they wanted to learn what we're doing. How do we transmit to the next generation? I went to Salt Lake City. I met with the Mormons because I'm meeting other presidents of faith-based universities. So they said to me, "If you're meeting the president, why don't you meet with the apostles?" I said, "Well, I thought they were dead, but if they're alive, I'm thrilled to meet them." So the apostles are the highest governing body of the Mormon church. And they brought me in. It's fascinating. I'll tell you the story another time, perhaps. Fascinating. 12 men sitting in a chamber. Why do they want me to speak? As president of the university, I represent the Jewish people. How do you do it? How are you successfully raising the rising generation? I had a Jesuit priest, the president of Fordham, said to me, "Yeshiva University is so important. When you go on donor meetings, take me with you." I keep on thinking like, the rabbi and a priest walk into a room and raise money for Yeshiva University. And he was saying, "I will tell them how important it is. We need you. We need your values in this world." The calls I've received from Muslims and major Muslim powers and countries who are looking to normalize and modernize their tradition, that perhaps is the most surprising. They look to Yeshiva University. They look to our community. Our community is uniquely able to bring our 3,000-year-old tradition into this world. Think about the context of the 13th century conversation between the Archbishop of Paris and all of the bishops 800 years ago and today. One of the bishops came from Blois. When I heard that he came from Blois, I was stunned. Blois was one of the places of the first bloodlines. And now the bishop is coming to Yeshiva University to see how the Jews successfully transmit their tradition. The world has changed dramatically. We are in a position to be Makadesh Shem Shemayim Barabim, like never before in history. And we have a unique role to play. There's a unique role for our people to play in Medinat Yisrael, of course, Uvan Me'elav, the greatest bracha that Hashem has given us in 2,000 years, Ein Safek. And there's a great role to play in the diaspora and the Tfutzot in the United States of America. As a bridge between other Jews, as a bridge between Israel and the diaspora, and as a way of bringing our tradition out into the world. Others realize the power of our ideas. And what our task is to ensure that the next generation, that our children do as well. Yeshiva University plays a crucial role as a force multiplier that rears the leadership of the next generation, but it's not just about YU. It's about all of us, synagogue and community leaders, parents and grandparents, high schools, teachers, and principals. This is our collective task. Our task in the years ahead is to build a generation of Jews, generations of Jews, who are mission-driven, who feel themselves that they're part of a greater purpose. And we can galvanize our global movement by inspiring them with the mission to live their lives in service to God on behalf of the broader people and to seek the betterment of all of society. We will be successful in our mission, for in this way we'll not only ensure the lives of our children and their children will be filled with a sense of Jewish purpose and values, that our entire people and the world around us will take a strong step forward towards our collective historic destiny. May that time come soon.
Amen.